Yes! Hello, my beautiful friends. What an amazing day it is today. We are jamming. We had Melania out, I think, launching a new Epstein strategy for the administration. We'll debrief what she said. She was only out for about 6 minutes, but I think this is going to be a big change. We saw that the prior attorney general and the prior strategy was just to kind of post through the whole saga. Now, I don't think this is where that's going, and I think that's good news. We'll hopefully finally put this to bed in due time. We'll then turn our attention to Cassidy Hutchinson. You remember her, clavicle girl, who, in our opinion, lied about her handwriting, lied about Trump reaching through the beast into the Secret Service agent's area of the vehicle, grabbing the clavicle, and then demanding that he take the vehicle back over to the Capitol. She's being probed again, and we'll go through that and see what the latest is. We also have a Supreme Court development, little short blurb out from Scotus today, but it's bad news for what allegedly is a person who is a fake Republican who tried to get on a primary ballot. Now, not allowed. We'll debrief exactly what's going on there. And then we'll be joined at the end of the stream by our friends from Empower Oversight because they're being censored. We had a whole mega stream talking about the new documentary Shielded by Power and how that is really unveiling all of the truth behind the Hunter Biden scam and the big guy. It had Miranda Devine. It had Mike Benz. It had Garrett Archer. It had John Solomon. It's got James Comer, Chuck Rapp, all these people in it. Now big tech is not letting the word out. So we'll hear from the people behind the film. And then, of course, we'll see what you have to say about all of this and more. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for subscribing to our channel, liking the video, and all of the things. We are jamming today. We're excited to get into it. Looks like the tubes are connected. That's tremendous news. Let's go ahead and dive right in. Melania Trump unleashing on the Epstein saga. This appears to us to be a major shift in the administration's strategy in dealing with this. The prior strategy was really just, people will move on. We'll just post through it. We'll release some files and everybody will forget about it. But what that has created is a major gap and an opening whereby the Democrats can come in and really frame and define the entire narrative. We've seen now that Susie Wiles said previously that Pam Bondi whiffed on the entire ordeal, didn't handle it appropriately, brought people in, the influencers, gave them the binder, then turned them loose, and then all of a sudden, dead. Congress voted overwhelmingly to release the files, and now Bondi's gone. Now we've got Lutnick, who is confirmed he's going to go testify, and then today, they rolled out the big guns, Melania Trump. And we'll come back and explain why we think this is such a good idea. But it's really a sword and a shield strategy, shielding President Trump by proxy and forcing these people who have made the claims to come into Congress and testify under oath. Put your money where your mouth is. Very easy to stand outside the Capitol building and just rant and rave about, being attacked by somebody. Come in and say it under oath. Give us the names. Don't just say that something bad happened to somebody sometime and the rest of us are supposed to just believe all women. It's not how it works. So Melania posted this today, very short little presser out at the White House. She online on X said a statement by First Lady Melania Trump, and this is what it sounded like, just a short bit from the First Lady here today. Wait for it. Wait, there it is. Nice entrance, regal. Something important's about to happen.
Good afternoon. The lies linking me.
Let's boost that volume up so we can hear the First Lady loud and clear.
With the disgraceful Jeffrey Epstein need to end today. The individuals lying about me are devoid of ethical standards,
true,
humility, and respect. I do not object to their ignorance, but rather I reject their mean-spirited attempts to defame my reputation. I never been friends with Epstein. Donald and I were invited to the same parties as Epstein from time to time, since overlapping in social circles is common in New York City and Palm Beach. To be clear, I never had a relationship with Epstein or his accomplice, Maxwell. My email reply to Maxwell cannot be categorized as anything more than casual correspondence. My polite reply to her email doesn't amount to anything more than a trivial note. I am not Epstein's victim. Epstein did not introduce me to Donald Trump. I met my husband by chance at a New York City party in 1998. This initial encounter with my husband is documented in a detail in my book, Melania. The first time I crossed paths with Epstein was in the year 2000 at an event Donald and I attended together. At the time, I had never met Epstein and had no knowledge of his criminal undertakings. Numerous fake images and statements about Epstein and me have been circulating on social media for years now. Be cautious about what you believe. These images and stories are completely false. I'm not a witness or a named witness in connection with any of Epstein's crimes. My name has never appeared in court documents, depositions, victim statements, or FBI interviews surrounding the Epstein matter. I have never had any knowledge of Epstein abuse of his victims. I was never involved in any capacity. I was not a participant, was never on Epstein's plane, and never visited his private island. I have never been legally accused or convinced of a crime in connection with Epstein's sex trafficking, abuse of minors, and other repulsive behavior. The false smears about me from mean-spirited and politically motivated individuals and entities looking to cause damage to my good name, to gain financially and climb politically, must stop. My attorneys and I have fought these unfounded and baseless lies with success and will continue to maintain my sound reputation without hesitation. To date, several individuals and companies have been legally obligated to publicly apologize and retract their lies about me, such as Daily Beast, James Carville, and HarperCollins, UK.
Blown out.
Now is the time for Congress to act. Epstein was not alone. Several prominent male executives resigned from their powerful positions after this matter became widely politicized. Of course, this doesn't amount to guilt, but we still must work openly and transparently to uncover the truth. I call on Congress to provide the women who have been victimized by Epstein with a public hearing specifically centered around the survivors.
Under oath.
Give these victims their opportunity to testify under oath in front of Congress with the power of sworn testimony.
Yes.
Each and every woman should have her day to tell her story in public if she wishes, and then her testimony should be permanently entered into the Congressional record.
Nice.
Then, and only then, we will have the truth. Thank you.
Secretary Lutnick to continue serving.
Close those doors. All right, so about 6 minutes from Melania, and let's break down what we think happened here. So Epstein, for a long time, and much to the chagrin of people who want to see a successful administration, has been an open wound for Trump. And it has enabled the Democrats, by not doing anything about it, to redefine the entire saga in their image. They've created the Epstein class. They've memeified it. I think all of it is untrue as it pertains to Trump. But by them not prosecuting anybody, it has turned into a Democrat buffet. They can just make up whatever they want. Now, the Democrats and the Republicans, in overwhelming fashion, demanded that the files be released. The Trump administration has said we've complied with that, but it's still not good enough. And so this, I think, is a major change in the strategy. First of all, Bondi's gone. Lutnick is now agreeing to testify. And this, I think, is the cauterizing of the wound, and it gives us some time to heal. Now, the post through it, the just ignore it strategy was just not working. And they can't have President Trump come out and be defensive about it, to come out and say, oh, there is no there, move on, stop talking about it, because then it makes him a party to the entire ordeal. Melania is, I think, the biggest figure who could come out and act as both the sword and the shield. She's shielding the president by proxy. She's saying, I have been married to him this entire time. I am not a victim here. I'm not somebody who is complicit. I'm not a co-conspirator. And the president and I have been together this entire time. If I'm innocent, then he's innocent. We have been in the same social circle. And her explanation also serves Trump and the president, because they're, of course, married. So it's a shield for him, but it's also a sword in a way, because a lot of this argument from the other side has been created in a vacuum. And now, by demanding that everybody comes in and testifies under oath, we can get some clarity about what the actual claims are. We've covered many different hearings here, from Massey and Ro Khanna and Marjorie Taylor Greene, with all of the women standing out in front of the Capitol saying, believe us, something bad happened. Well, can you tell us what happened? No, I can't. Why? It's the DOJ's job. All right, well, the DOJ has come to their conclusion. They have released files, not all of them, but they've released files. They've retained some under national security. And of course, it's never going to be good enough, which is why we had the dump truck theory. Just fill up a dump truck with all the files, drop them on Thomas Massey's front lawn and say, it's your problem. You guys voted for it. Here you go. But they didn't do that. And because they're responsible, and for good reason. Now, if they have Melania out demanding they come in under oath, I have a sneaking suspicion that many of the same women who are out there, who all got, many of them, big settlements, got a lot of cash, writing books about this, going on podcasts, really elevating their status, having settlements with JP Morgan Chase, having settlements with various other entities, the Epstein estate. If you say that there is a third party who attacked you, go into Congress under oath. You're going to have congressional immunity, because it's going to be part of a legislative proceeding. You're not going to be sued for defamation. No one's going to kill you or whatever you're crying about. Go make your case and stop with all of the innuendo. Melania and Trump have been in the middle of a social media war and basically convicted by posts on the internet. Now we can bring this whole thing in under wraps in Congress and really flesh it out. Now, there's a minor risk, obviously. They know, they've seen the files. What happens if somebody comes out and names Trump, or somebody comes out and names a third party? I have my doubts about both of those. First of all, I don't think Trump did anything. But if they name a third party and they lied about it, or they lied under oath, well, they're going to get prosecuted for a crime for that. And I don't know if they'll actually get prosecuted, but it really is a strong disincentive. You generally don't want to prosecute victims. If they're the victims of a crime, you don't prosecute them. But if they're lying and they're in Congress under oath, that changes the entire game. And this strategy kicks this ball back over to Congress. They passed overwhelmingly the Epstein Files Transparency Act. And if they want to stand by that saga and that endeavor, then they can just hold some hearings and bring these people in. So no more innuendo. Actually flesh this out on the floor of Congress, and they can put their money where their mouth is. Now, it's not going to be enough for them, because you make your grift in the gray area. It's a lot easier to not name anybody or say anything specific, but just to say the other guy's bad. Why? I can't talk about it. He should talk about it. He should release everything. Well, the DOJ's done that. they've released what they're going to release. And if you want to get more out of them, go into Congress and testify. Now, this, I think, is part of a massive administration shift. Pam Bondi is gone, very likely because she whiffed, according to Susie Wiles, on the Epstein files. And now Howard Lutnick, I think, is nervous that he's going to suffer the same fate. So he's going in to testify next month in front of the Oversight Committee, and we'll see what his testimony is. I think personally, there's a lot of evidence that this guy just lied through his teeth. I'm offended about it because he did that on with Miranda Devine's podcast. Oh, my wife and I went over there for coffee right next door. And then we thought he was disgusting and we never went back and saw him again. Then we find all the emails, we find the photos. Apparently he's on the island. So he's got some explaining to do, but he's going to go and testify. Pam Bondi is out and the post-through-it strategy is no longer, I think, in effect. And Melania, of course, is a very sympathetic figure. It's a lot harder to attack her than it is to attack President Trump. And she's been successful legally on this. The other people like James Carville, who were trying to smear her name through the mud, have now gotten a legal backhand. So a positive development. And I think that this is necessary. I think, unfortunately, this has really saturated the not politically inclined mindset. People who are just kind of touching and going with politics don't really know the saga. They don't really know how the media works. They don't understand the depth of the Democrat depravity that exists on issues like this. And so this is an opportunity to turn the ship around, cauterize the wound, and hopefully we can move forward. Now, what Melania was talking about was this email. And just to back up her claim here, this email was from 2002. When did Epstein get convicted of his plea deal that he took, which was a joke of a plea deal? That was back in 2008. So the email predates by 6 years anything that anybody really knew about. I mean, they may have known about the guy, but it was rumors and whispers. It became official and confirmed in the record back in 2008. Then indicted later in 2019 during Trump's first term. And then, of course, killed himself, according to Dan Bongino. So this is the email. It says, "Dear Glenn, how are you? Nice story about Jeffrey in the New York Magazine. You look great on the picture. I know you were very busy flying all over the world. How was Palm Beach? I cannot wait to go down. Give me a call when you're back in New York. Have a great time. Love, Melania." And they were hanging out in the same social circles down there in Mar-a-Lago and in Florida. So her story is consistent. She's been successful in the other claims that other lunatics have been made against her. And we're happy to see some changes. Now, another interesting development is we're learning that Bondi is not going to be testifying, saying she will not appear for the April 14th deposition over Epstein. And this may be part of the reason she's out of there. And if she does get hauled in, if they really double down on the subpoena to her, I've got a strong inkling that she's going to plead the fifth and not talk about it. And we long ago made the argument that there's going to be real criminal liability for them. And they're already talking about it, Massey and others, saying that they're literally obstructing a federal law, right? So the next Democrat AG who comes in, they may form the Democrats another Epstein J6 committee, right? Illegally constituted or whatever, and turn this thing into a whole giant disaster. So the DOJ, according to CBS, has stated that Bondi will not appear on April 14th for a deposition since she is no longer AG, and she was subpoenaed as her capacity as Attorney General. The committee will contact her personal lawyer, and they'll discuss the next steps about scheduling her deposition. That was in a letter to Comer obtained by CBS News. The Assistant AG, Patrick Davis, wrote that the subpoena was issued to Bondi in her official capacity, not personally, and she doesn't hold that office, so she's not coming in. And they asked Comer to confirm that the subpoena was withdrawn. They say the department remains committed to working cooperatively with the committee. And if you think any additional and we think, continues to believe that any additional compulsory process is unnecessary in light of our demonstrated willingness to voluntarily assist in your oversight efforts. And so she's gone. Other Democrats are saying, no, she still has to come in. It was to Pam. It was not to AG. And the survivors deserve justice. And if you think that there, Representative Garcia, then why don't you just bring them in there and they can explain it on the floor of Congress and they'll have legislative immunity. You'll have immunity. They'll have immunity because you hauled them in there and everybody can just spill the beans and everybody can get to the bottom of this. Maria and Annie Farmer said, you got to bring Bondi in. Well, why don't you guys go in? We listened to one of their hearings and the survivors, so-called, And they said they have a list of names. The one woman said she's going to release it on her podcast and then never did. And then when we said, can you just release it right now? They said, well, why should we? Well, it's because you're the victim of a crime, apparently, allegedly. And if you're the victim of a crime, every victim of a crime needs to say who did it. I mean, imagine if you're the victim of some horrific thing on a college campus or something. You go into the police department and you say, I have no idea who armed me or who attacked me. He said, well, can you tell us when? No. Can you tell us where? No. Can you tell us, were there any other people involved? Can you name them? No, we can't. Okay. So what can we do about that? We have no information. You got to help us help you. It's the same standard procedure in any criminal case. And for some reason, they don't want to do it here, because if you start to get down to specifics and you pin them down, this is like standard cross-examination in a criminal case. You say this happened. Now you need to validate it, at least to the point where there's probable cause. And then the DOJ can take it from there, report it to the DOJ, and they can run with it. So this, I don't know, will satiate large portions of the Democratic Party. I don't think it will at all, but it kicks the ball back into their court. You guys want to keep crying about this. DOJ has done its due diligence. Now the administration is saying, bring him in to testify. And if you won't do that, why is that? Well, we know why it is. I think they're a little bit nervous that guys like Bill Gates and Reid Hoffman will get caught up in the middle of all this. Now, Bill Gates is going to come and testify. And there was some nasty stuff alleged about him and, getting some apparent STDs and stuff and not telling his wife and giving her some secret medication to make the itch go away or whatever. So he will be scheduled to testify before the House Oversight Committee, along with many other people who've testified before. And let's not forget, okay, Bill Clinton went in and testified here as a former president. So that precedent has been set. And if this thing continues on for years to come, and the Democrats are not going to forget about it, they're going to haul Trump in under oath for a testimony. And as we've seen, they'll just make up evidence against him if they can't find anything, which they won't be able to. So this is now developing. I personally am happy to see some progress on this. Our strategy this entire time was they need to indict somebody. And we already gave them ideas on 4 people to indict, all the 4 women who were literal co-conspirators in Epstein's plea deal, named in there by name, Nadia Marcinkova and many others, are all already in the draft federal indictment that never came down. All they need to do, dust that off. The new attorney general can pick it up, say there's been a material change in circumstances because the Supreme Court has denied Ghislaine Maxwell's petition for a writ of habeas corpus, saying she doesn't have immunity, and the plea deal only immunized people in one single specific district, the Southern District of Florida. Once that precedent is now set, then they can say, oh, great, we now know that the plea deal doesn't extend beyond Florida. They can go after all of the co-conspirators in the various states, New Mexico, New York, Virgin Islands, and bring these indictments. But the post-through-it strategy was just not working. I know a lot of people just wanted to move on from this because it's kind of a disgusting case and a disgusting story. But it was becoming a political albatross hanging around the neck of the administration. And Melania, I think, is showing us that that is now changing. So big development. We'll keep our eye on this. We'll see if Democrats or even Republicans and Massey and Khanna and the rest of them, if they say, oh, you know what? That's a great idea. We should bring people in under oath. Or do they just want to continue to use this as a cudgel against the administration so that they have an endless supply of name and blame and shame all of their political opponents? We're happy to see it. We hope it leads to actual truth and puts responsibility where it belongs, back on Obama's White House counsel, Catherine Rummler, back on Bill Gates, Democrat super donor, back on Reid Hoffman, who funded the E. Jean Carroll case and is now funding like victims' survival commercials. Those are the people behind it, not this administration, not Melania, who've all been wrongfully smeared on it. And the development is welcome, and we'll keep our eye on this one. All right, now we've got some other very interesting developments to get to here today. Clavicle girl Cassidy Hutchinson now facing a new probe. We know this was the woman who was the star witness, the load-bearing witness for the fake January 6th Select Committee that allowed them to propagate the biggest hoax in modern American history, which was the insurrection led by President Trump and people who contested the 2020 election. And now the DOJ is sending this over to the Civil Rights Division, saying the DOJ is reportedly investigating Clavicle Girl. And if you remember, she was the subject of a major interim report that was drafted and released back on December 17th. And before we move into the new probe, just a reminder on some of her highlights. Remember, this was the gal who said that Trump was in the beast. She heard this like second or third hand. Someone said this, someone said that, and then referred it over to her. And she then went and told Liz Cheney about it. Problem is, in my opinion, she's a liar and she made it all up. And this massive report, 56 pages of it in the first section of it, that she was actually colluding with Alyssa Farah to try to connect with Liz Cheney. At the time, she was represented by an attorney called Stephen Passatino, who was defending her in her truthful statements before she flipped them all to the other side, gave Liz Cheney exactly what she needed. Liz Cheney came out, called an emergency hearing, was like wall to wall, all across the media. Everybody paused. What's this going to be? Liz Cheney finally has something, because her previous hearings delivered nothing and it was all just a giant dud. So this was Cassidy sending this over to Alyssa. You know her from that terrible show called The View. Said, I know you're busy, but is there a chance you've touched base with anyone about what we talked about? Hi, yeah, so I reached out to Liz personally. She totally admires you, and she wanted to tell you that she could tell you wanted the right thing from your testimony. She was concerned that you have a lawyer, so maybe it's unethical if she talks to you. And does that help? She says, I mean, do you think it's actually of interest to her? Like, can I pitch my story? Can I kind of convince her that I'll be on her team? And then she'll bring me under her wing? Have they moved beyond it? Oh no, she's very interested. Liz Cheney wants to tamper with you as a witness and bring you on into the case. And so Liz Cheney ultimately texted with her. We've got copies of those texts as well. But we fast forward through this, and this was the key lie. Okay, Trump was extremely angry and used his free hand, she said, to lunge at Bobby Engel and then attacked his clavicle right in the neck. Ugh. All of that, of course, made up. Did the president become irate? He was agitated. Was there a heated argument in the Suburban? It wasn't even the Beast. And we remember the testimony. Now, Cheney was pumping her for this information, and this became the major argument that was then spread all over the media. And we got to indulge in that day after day. Trump attacked a Secret Service agent because Cassidy Hutchinson is so honest. And this was also the woman who lied, in my opinion. This lie says it's written on a chief of staff note card. But is that your handwriting, Miss Hutchinson? Yes, that is my handwriting. And why did you write this note? Well, the chief of staff was in a meeting with Eric Hirschman. They had rushed out of the office quickly. Mark handed me the note card and started dictating a statement and says there were two phrases on there. One, illegal and without proper authority, and blah, blah, blah. Here's the note. Anyone who entered the Capitol illegal, crossed out, without proper authority should leave immediately. Does that look like Clavicle's little story, little handwriting situation? No. Here's actually what her handwriting looks like. She wrote this in a birthday card. Dear redacted, and in my heart, happy birthday. So you can see the compare and contrast. Hey, thank you for being a blank person, and I'm lucky to have you. I love you. Oh, that's cute. Heart, Cass, peace sign, heart, smiley face. That's what she writes. That's how she looks like. Now, this is somebody else's handwriting right there. Does that look even remotely the same at all? No, it doesn't. Slides, outline, that was handwriting of somebody else. And so conclusion is she's a liar. Okay, she testified under oath that that was her handwriting. And then we got more text messages from Alyssa Farah. And we've covered a lot of this, but I'm just refreshing our recollection here. And in conclusion, writes this memo, they say, as the star witness for Liz Cheney, her testimony formed the basis of their false and most enduring claims about Trump. Without her fake lies, it is unlikely the committee could make its assertions about any of Trump's moods, attitude, or culpability in the events. She's mentioned by name in their report 185 times. And they discredited all of the other witnesses who were actually telling the truth and would have undermined her testimony. So they failed to do its due diligence, and they're liars. Okay, the whole thing was a gigantic scam. So that's why she's being probed again. Reporting that they're now investigating her. She was the so-called star witness. Republicans had been pushing for this probe for a while, saying that her version of the events, including claims that Trump tried to grab the clavicle and the steering wheel, were filled with lies. Loudermilk referred her to the DOJ for a perjury probe based on all of these lies. And while some DOJ officials expressed skepticism about this, the inquiry was opened in recent weeks under former AG called Pam Bondi. She was the centerpiece of all of this. She was an aide to Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. She said that she had known about potential violence to erupt, and the White House did, and said that even other people, like the president, were saying, I don't effing care if they have weapons. They weren't here to hurt me. Trump said, I don't care if they bring in weapons to the Capitol. Let my people in. They can march from the Capitol there. All of her testimony should have been discredited based on her lies. Now, even Jim Jordan said Cassidy is someone that the whole country knows was not telling the truth. The New York Times reported that the probe into Hutchinson is being handled by the Civil Rights Division, which the paper said was unusual for a branch that usually focuses on voting rights. That means it's now coming under the scrutiny of Harmeet Dillon. Paper said the decision to push forward was an attempt by Bondi to shore up her support. Bondi's gone. In the first news conference, Blanche defended calls for the actual justice for liars to Congress. And that's his right to do that. And Trump can lead the country by demanding accountability for all of this. So little new information on the probe other than the fact that it's been now referred over to Harmeet Dillon. She actually gets stuff done and has been launching actual other lawsuits for all of the election fraud and the election voter rolls that many states don't want to hand over under federal law. And Cassidy wrote a whole book about this. She says, enough, a profile in courage, read by the author. Just want to play a little bit of this for you so you can see what a ridiculous thing it is. A profile in courage. Sounds like she's a liar. Here's a little bit from her stupid book, courtesy of The Researcher. She says that Alyssa Griffin was an informal advisor to the fake J6 committee. Cassidy mentioned talking to Sam as well about backchanneling to Liz Cheney. And I would not be surprised, writes the researcher, who would know better than anybody, if Sam was actually Kevin McCarthy. Oh, here's a little excerpt.
One Saturday in early October, I woke up to a message from Alyssa. She had been informally advising the committee. Alyssa explained that Liz Cheney was open to meeting with me one-on-one without lawyers, the press, or Democrats. She encouraged me to accept the offer. She did not want to see me shelling out thousands of dollars for an attorney, or even worse, being dragged into relying on Trump World for protection, as many others were. I knew Alyssa was looking out for me. We had talked about our family histories, and she knew I did not have people I could rely on financially. I admired Liz, but
so she couldn't afford it. If she didn't come in and cooperate with Liz, Liz was going to make her life hell. And as soon as she sat down with Liz, there were multiple depositions, multiple interviews. Liz was not happy about it. They brought her back in, I think, for a fourth one. Then all of a sudden, clavicle story emerges. They make it up. They're sick. And her lawyer, Stephan Passatino, is suing, or is in the middle of litigation, suing Andrew Weissman, because the left is now saying that her original lawyer was coercing her into lying. Not Liz Cheney. No, Liz Cheney was not coercing her or obstructing her or tampering with a witness, breaking ethical rules, knowing that Cassidy was actually represented by a lawyer. She was back-channeling, maybe through Kev, definitely through Alyssa Farah, to get her to flip her story. And look what happens. She gets a book deal. She writes an audiobook that reads like you're trying to watch paint dry. Brutal. And she is a courageous person, and everybody, the Washington Post and the entire media establishment, sets her up, lifts her up on their arms, and perpetuates the hoax. So we're happy to see the Probe continues. We're going to continue to cover the litigation between her lawyer and Andrew Weissman, that guy with the weird voice who's always on MSNBC, who is part of Mueller's hack team to try to take out Trump in that endeavor. They have networks of people. It's just a big flywheel. It's like a big sausage factory. As long as you can attack their political opponents, they'll just turn you into a sausage, give you a book deal, and elevate you. But now that there's been a little changing of the guard over at the DOJ, and hopefully a little bit of a pep in the step that has been reinvigorated there, we'll start to see some developments on this probe. And maybe the first person who delivers something good can be the AG. We'll see. So we'll keep our eye on this one. Thank you for subscribing and joining as we do. Now, let's talk about another very nice development that has been percolating and decided today, starting right here. A so-called fake Republican is now booted out of the primary. You see, this case is Samuel Ronan versus the Ohio Secretary of State. And a little backstory before we take a look at what the Supreme Court did in a very short decision that is reverberating throughout the primary process there in Ohio. You see, Samuel Ronan was running as a Republican. Turns out, though, allegations are he's not actually a Republican at all, because Samuel Ronan ran to be the DNC chair. And this is a strategy that the Democrats are using to try to win elections. They want to insert themselves into the primary process such that if it's a red district, they can just win by proxy. As long as they can win the primary, then they're going to win the general because it's just a red district. So they'd rather not compete in their own primaries. Otherwise, it's going to be a strong red versus a very weak blue. Go into the primaries, dupe the Republican voters, see if you can win that, pretend to be a Republican, and then you win by default. And then you've got a sneaky Democrat who's actually inserted themselves and won the seat. It's happening in many locations. You're seeing it as their newest strategy because they're such dishonest people. But here's the post over from Wikipedia. 2017 DNC chairman election. Look whose name shows up right over here. Oh, Sam Ronan. Very curious. The same guy that we saw in the Supreme Court brief. Now, Tom Perez, Keith Ellison, they emerged as favored candidates. Other candidates were somebody named Sally Pete Booty and future DNC chairman called Jamie Harrison, Sam Ronan, and Jehu Green. So Ronan, for quite some time, has been wanting to be in political power. And what happened, of course, is he ran for office. And in Ohio, they had a very contentious back and forth on this. And so he was originally on the ballot, got certified as a Republican. Then it was contested. Voters said, this guy is not a Republican. They filed a complaint with Frank LaRose, who's the Secretary of State. And they said, Frank, you got to do something about this. He's not actually a Republican. Kick him out of the primary process because the parties can decide who the candidates are in their primaries. And there's all these rules about that. So what happened here is Samuel Ronan and Anna Cordero, after he got booted off, sued and said, you have to put us back. The lower level district judge did put him back and said, yep, he's on there fair and square. Now we're in the middle of an election and you can't kick him off. So they sued. I've got two briefs to share with you before we take a look at what the Supreme Court did. Here is his emergency application. We'll just hit the highlights of this so we get some background on what went down. He says, all right, look, I'm Samuel. I want to be in this primary case. He says, we're asking now the Supreme Court. This all happened very quickly, by the way. Supreme Court acted on this with haste. You can see the original application for the injunction was submitted back on April 6th, 3 days ago. Pretty quick. Response to the application was due by yesterday. The response was filed by the secretary. Then we got a decision from the court today. And let's take a look at what went down. So he sues. He goes up to the Supreme Court. An emergency. He says, help me, Supreme Court. Help me. You're my only hope. He says, we're now asking for an injunction. Stop the Ohio secretary for kicking me off the primary ballot. The Sixth Circuit, he says, I already went there. They denied my emergency motion for a stay of the district court's decision to lift its TRO. And the district court put him on and then didn't put him on. I think they issued some order. We're at the Supreme Court, so we'll bypass all that. But he says, look, I'm here and we certify this is an urgent matter of ballot access. We have a primary coming up in Ohio, May 5th. Applicant Ronan was previously certified to the Republican primary election ballot back in February 17th, by the Franklin County Board of Elections. Then he was removed a month later by the Secretary of State. Someone complained about this and said, you're a fake Republican. You're not even real. Get out. That was the day before the Uokava ballots were sent out. The district court then did enter a TRO, a temporary restraining order, and they restored the applicant Ronan back onto the ballot. That was back on March 20th. But then entered an order denying further preliminary injunctive relief to keep him off the ballot. Okay, so it's like a TRO is very temporary. Then you brief it a little bit further. Then he says, well, all right, actually, no. So I'm putting you on. Then actually, no, we're taking you off. By that same order, acting upon the oral motion, the district court stayed lifting its TRO until Monday, April 6th, this week, to allow Ronan, the fake Republican, to seek emergency relief before ultimately removing him from the ballot. Now, because time is of the essence, with the TRO preserving his ballot certification, that dissolves on noon. Early voting in Ohio begins the morning of April 7th, 2 days ago. We seek emergency relief from the Supreme Court. We respectfully request an immediate administrative stay of your order, the lower level court's order, to protect this guy and put him back on the ballot. What is his claim? First Amendment. He says, by their own admission, Ohio removed him from the Republican ballot based solely on the content of his political speech. They said that his past statements on various issues were inconsistent with Republican principles, and you're not actually a Republican at all, and that he therefore must have lied when he swore under oath that he is in fact a Republican and that he intends to abide by Republican principles. But he says, this is his filing, I didn't lie. And he says, more importantly, the Elections Clause doesn't authorize respondents to go after that and inquire into his core political speech. In fact, the Constitution prohibits that. He says the lower level court committed clear error by concluding that his actions imposed a minimal burden and you should grant a relief and stay. Allow him to go back on the ballot. He says, so I'm bringing this under Section 1983 and I need an emergency declaration. On March 19th, not long ago, late in the afternoon, the Ohio Secretary LaRose, he announced that he was removing him. Nope, you're not a Republican. We caught you. You're a liar. Nice try. And why? Because some Ohio voter, shout out to whoever that is, they filed a complaint. He says, we weren't even notified about it as the fake Republican. We just learned about this decision through a news release. So then we went over to the district court the following morning and we got a TRO. Said there's a strong likelihood he's going to win on the First Amendment claims, and I need my name to go out on the overseas ballots, which are already being printed and shipped out. Then Roman was certified by the Franklin County Board of Supervisors as a qualified candidate for the Republican Party for the primary coming up in May to fill the 15th Congressional District on or about Feb 17. Saying, I timely satisfied all the things. I did not lie under oath. Everything was truthful. I said the following. This is what I declared. I am a member of the Republican Party. And I further declare, if elected to said office, I will qualify therefore, and I will support and abide by the principles enunciated by the Republican Party. Then this guy, hero, Mark A. Sherry, he filed a complaint. He filed a protest. He said, this guy is not a Republican at all, and he is not going to abide by Republican principles if he isn't elected. He claimed that because of his lack of ideological agreement, that he was not following the principles and his declaration of advocacy for candidacy was not actually truthful. So therefore, he was then booted. There was a hearing there in Ohio at the Franklin County Board of Elections. Cher went there and he pointed to legal authority supporting his theory. He said, an untrue Republican can be removed from a primary ballot by election officials who do not believe that his political philosophy, the guy wanted to be the DNC chair, by the way, is consistent with Republican principles. In their papers filed with the secretary after the board hearing, he said, by the way, Ohio law does not and should not allow a candidate to intentionally lie about their affiliation. And Ronan is saying, this is an ideological purity test. Now, unknown to us at the time of the hearing, this guy's lawyers were being paid by the Ohio Republican Party. It's their primary. Cher's lawyers were thus effectively representing Cher and the Ohio Republican Party. That fact was not disclosed to us until the Board of Elections tied on this. Okay, it came down to the wire, 2-2, split over his removal. Now, later during discovery, he also learned that the Ohio Republican Party protested him at the request of his only primary opponent, the actual Republican running. So Ronan then testified at a hearing before the district court, and he responded to allegations that he was lying. He wasn't. He says, I am a Republican. And someone questioned him extensively about his past political positions and statements, referring to a 2024 news article about his candidacy in the Republican primary against Trump. He pointed to a number of his statements and positions. He says those are not Republican statements. And after describing this guy's positions on taxes, healthcare, President Trump, etc., she concluded, I don't see these as being things that the Republican Party would agree on. And you're a fake Republican, so get out. Now, anticipating that this guy was chairing the county Republican Party, says this person was not neutral. So Ronan moved to dismiss and disqualify this board member from participating in the protest. Federal Election Commission's filings showed that they've donated to each other. And it's like, yeah, they're all Republicans. That's what they do. So we also discovered that after the hearing, the Franklin County Republican Parent Organization was the real party in interest, and they were actually just using this guy to file a suit. After hearing testimony from the protester and Ronan, as well as examples of his past and present political statements and positions, the 4-member Board of Elections tied, and they denied the protest. The 2 Republican members of the board, Precy and Friedhoff, voted against the motion, while 2 Democrats voted in favor. Now, because it was a tie, it went up to the Secretary of State. The Secretary gets to break the tie. In a letter explaining their vote to LaRose, the Secretary, the 2 Republicans said, our conclusion that Mr. Ronan should not remain on the ballot is based on his own past, recent, and repeated declarations. So the Secretary came out, cast the tie-breaking vote on March 19, 2026, and voted to disqualify him. You're out. You're not a Republican. Stop faking it. So in explaining his rationale, the Secretary said, well, here's what I find. His public statements and those of individuals associated with him make it clear that he's seeking the Republican nomination as part of a long-standing strategy, keep your wits about you on this, to have Democrats run as Republicans in Republican primaries, especially in red states where it makes no sense for them to run as a blue because they're not going to win. It's a red district. So they have to kind of needle their way in here and then maybe get a bunch of Democrats to cross over in the primary and vote for them and steal the seat. Applicants immediately brought this action. This is Ronan. Following an informal hearing, the chief granted a TRO and said back on the ballot. He found a strong likelihood that this was a violation of the First Amendment, gave us an oral ruling, and went through his decision. But Ronan's Facebook post, he said, did not say that he did not self-identify. It did not say that he was, quote, running to infiltrate the party. It did not disavow his stated intent to run as a Republican or any of those things. It was just one cherry-picked post, one of literally hundreds or thousands that he posted, merely explaining that he was attempting to transfer his working class principles, his Democrat principles, to the Republican primaries. The Democrats are not the party of the working class. They're the party of the lawyers, the media grifters, and the transgenderizing talk therapists. Indeed, the post states, I'm not a grifter, and chastises traitorous Democrats. So he submits all this evidence. He's like, I'm actually a real Republican, and Republicans actually believe in socialism or something. Now, these are just a few of his statements. He made a bunch of them under oath, and these are bad faith interpretations of his statements. He is a real Republican. He's not actually a Democrat. And many people have changed their political parties. He said even Trump did. Trump was kind of neutral. He may have been a Democrat. Ronald Reagan was a Democrat. And so was Lincoln. And so was Bernie Sanders, who was an independent, and he shifted. So you have to keep me on the ballot. Put me back on. He goes through Ohio law, and we get the gist of his claims. But then we see what we have now is the response from LaRose. So this is Frank LaRose from the Ohio Secretary's office responding back to the Supreme Court in an emergency fashion because this guy is really racing to get back on the ballot. He says, all right, Supreme Court, this is ridiculous. Now, this case arises from statutory process resolving challenges in a partisan primary. After Ronan was certified as a Republican candidate, by a majority vote, a private voter sued, said this guy's a liar. He misrepresented his affiliation. Then the board conducted a hearing, got evidence from both sides, and split evenly. The Democrats were like, yeah, no, he's definitely a Republican. All the Democrats, like, keep him on the ballot. Sure, yeah. Republicans love communism. Yeah. So under Ohio law, after it was a split 50-50, that matter was referred to the Secretary LaRose, and he said, yeah, I know what this guy is. And he revoked Ronan's certification. Now, applicants filed suit asserting multiple constitutional claims, including claims under the First Amendment, elections, due process, and more. They principally say that the protest process and the tie-breaking vote were improper and that they harmed his political participation. They also said that this board member, okay, this is how the Democrats play. The board member who voted should have been booted off, and it should have been a 2-1 vote because of a conflict. And then LaRose couldn't have had a say at all. The secretary wouldn't have been the tiebreaker if it was a 2-1 vote. And that violated due process. So then they tried, once you lose the vote and follow the rules, then they tried to rig the actual board and boot people off. After a hearing, the district court denied a further injunction and dissolved the TRO and said, yeah, you're off the ballot. Court of Appeals declined his relief. So now he goes up to the Supreme Court and he demands an injunction. He wants this done in an expedited basis and needs it to happen quickly because the ballots are literally going out. Now, the opposition comes from everybody else. We've got Friedhoff, the board members, we've got the Secretary of State. And he says because the board met a tie and the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office represents all board members take no position on any of these claims. Only here we're talking about due process. And here's why this fake Republican's claim fails. The due process clause only applies to a plaintiff when they identify a protected interest that is ultimately at stake. And this court has long recognized that a candidate for political office holds no due process rights to appear on the ballot. You got to get there fair and square. Even if a protected interest existed, he cannot show that anything that we did here was constitutionally deficient. Their theory rests on speculation that political organizations supported by another candidate and that created an indirect interest and that a decision maker shouldn't have been a part of the decision. None of that meets the threshold. It all fails as a matter of law and fact. And if we accepted that, that would require recusal based on simple political affiliation. Oh, that guy is a member of the Republican Party. He's deciding that I'm not a member of the Republican Party. Therefore, he can't make a decision because he's got a conflict. That would undermine the whole scheme. And that does not apply here. So Supreme Court, they say, this lower level court improperly actually rejected his claim. We had a full evidentiary hearing. He had all the due process to which he was entitled, which is to say basically none. And he can't show he's going to win. And so keep him off this case. Here's their version of what happened. They say Samuel Ronan, the former candidate to be the DNC chair, he filed a declaration of candidacy with Franklin County, Ohio. He wanted to be in the Republican primary. And he was actually certified as a candidate. All the Democrats were like, yeah, baby, we're doing it. That's upcoming, the May 5th primary. On February 20th, Mark Scheer, a member of the Republican Central Committee, filed a protest, said this guy's a liar. The protest alleged that Ronan was not a bona fide Republican, had misrepresented his party affiliation, citing statements indicating that he engaged in strategic rather than genuine party affiliation. Then Ronan submitted a motion seeking to disqualify him. One of the board members, who was a Republican, saying there's too big of a conflict. Board held a hearing and ultimately, following the hearing, had a 2-2 vote, as we learned about. Then the secretary cast the tie-breaking vote and he got the boot. Now, this went up to various districts. After a hearing, the lower level court ultimately said no. Later that day, he went up to the Supreme Court and now he's asking for an emergency petition. And you can see their argument is he is not going to win this. He cannot show a likelihood of success on the merits. There's no due process rights under the 14th Amendment here. And even if he did have a protective interest, we protected it. We gave him a full hearing. We gave him a chance to present evidence. All the parties got to make their vote. The law says if there's a tie, the secretary gets to break the tie. All of that happened here. And so any due process claim fails. The board member, did not initiate the protest, had no interest, no stake, is not conflicted out of there. She did not get instruction or direction or any request from anybody appropriately, and had no knowledge that anybody would be paying fees for these things. So there's no conflict at all. And so in sum, Supreme Court, this case presents none of the extraordinary circumstances required to establish a due process violation. It involves the kind of attenuated, speculative, generalized allegations that this court has repeatedly held to be insufficient, has shown no irreparable harm, and is now trying to just nudge his way in there. In fact, now he's trying to run, or can run if he wants to, as an independent. And by the way, the election is already underway. Granting relief now would not prevent harm. It would introduce a fake candidate into an ongoing election. And so none of this supports his reasons for shoving him back on the paper. That disruption would be acute here. Voters have already been informed this guy is not a candidate. Reversing course again risks undermining voter confidence and introducing uncertainty into an ongoing election. This court has repeatedly said under the Purcell principle, you can't do that. And so therefore, kick him off. The application should be denied. In conclusion, submitted by the prosecuting attorneys out there in Ohio. And the Supreme Court today, granted the demand ultimately to keep him off the ballot. Very short order. You see Scotus Wire gave us an excerpt here. Says the Supreme Court denied a request to block Ohio from removing a DNC chair from the Republican primary ballot. Denied a request to stop Ohio from booting this guy off. No justice noted a dissent. Here's the decision. The application for an injunction in other words, by Samuel Ronan to stop the removal pending appeal presented to Judge Kavanaugh is hereby denied. And he is no longer going to be on the ballot. So very nice decision. It's a sneaky thing that these Democrats are doing. Supreme Court said we're not going to entertain this anymore. And the Democrat insurrection of the Republican primary has now been canceled. But keep your eye about you on this one, because this is happening in multiple locations. I've seen other clips of other Democrats making the same attempt. They can't win based on their policies unless they're cheating and invading the country with illegal aliens and spending money for their NGOs and C3s and colluding with guys like Norm Eisen and Mark Elias in order to gerrymander the outcomes and gerrymander the seats. So this is what they do. Very sneaky and contemptuous behavior, but fortunately, we saw through it on this one. SCOTUS says, you lose, get off the ballot, go run as an independent if you want to. So nice win there, and we'll keep our eye on all of this nonsense as it continues to develop. Now, let me do just a quick check and see where we're at on our conversation with our friends. Let me make sure I sent them the right link, and they should be joining us in just about a minute or two. I think that is the right link. And so hopefully they're going to be here soon, but let me just kind of warm this up and give us a little preview on what is happening here, because we have a very interesting case that is happening. Yeah. Let's get into this one. Big tech censorship is back. We know that they attempted to cover up the Hunter Biden laptop back during the Biden election campaign so that the Hunter Biden scandal and his debauchery and disgustingness would not interfere with their efforts to seize power. And now we see that Empower Oversight, one of the best whistleblower law firms in the entire country, the people behind the documentary called Shielded by Power, which we're excited to see when it comes out, they put together an entire expose and documented how the media buried this. And it had amazing people who were in the documentary, which is coming soon in just 3 days from now. Congressman James Comer was there. We had Miranda Devine, who was there. Zuckerberg admitted back during that election that he was getting warned by the FBI. Don't you dare release any of these stories. It's all Russian propaganda. And now, as the documentary is set to be released, what we're seeing is the same media companies who covered a lot of that up back then are doing the same thing now. And we're about to hear from the people behind the film, Tristan Leavitt at Empower Oversight, and Chris Dodge, the filmmaker. Here's what they posted as we count down to the release of this film. We see Congressman, they wrote, he said that the FBI pre-bunking. We all remember this. Remember when Congressman James Comer revealed evidence that the Biden campaign colluded with big tech to suppress a story? All of us now know it's 100% true. We also remember that Miranda Devine explained the pre-bunking strategy on this, said it's Russian propaganda. And all of the story was breaking, but nobody could see it because the social media companies were suppressing it. Now, as Mark Zuckerberg admitted, these warnings led social media giants to take the extraordinary steps to throttle the story, remove links, post warnings that all of this information was unsafe. Now, this just wasn't a tech policy. It was a coordinated effort to control the narratives and shield the powerful people from a story that could have changed the course of an election, which is why they covered it up. So here's a clip, and then we'll be joined by the people behind the film. Remember this one from James Comer explaining how this whole thing went down.
What he's showing here is evidence that the Biden campaign colluded with big tech to suppress a story that we now know is 100% true.
Quote, Twitter took extraordinary steps to suppress the story, removing links and posting warnings that may be unsafe.
The FBI came to us. It was like, hey, just so you know, like, you should be on high alert. We thought that there was a lot of Russian propaganda.
So this was effectively the FBI pre-bunking our story and ensuring that, as happened when Twitter and Facebook saw the story, they immediately recognized it for the disinformation that they'd been warned about by the FBI. So it was not difficult for them to pull it off because they thought they were doing what the FBI wanted them to do, and they were.
So that is a little bit of a trailer from Empower Oversight on Shielded by Power. You can check that out at shieldedbypower.com. And they're raising some funds to help with the distribution of the film so that more people can see it. And our friend Tristan Leavitt, you've seen him and heard from him before on our channel. He wrote this letter, which was a beautiful letter. Normally what we do is read these letters, but fortunately today we've got Tristan Leavitt, who is here to walk us through exactly what is going on. And then I do believe we'll also be joined by the filmmaker himself, Chris Dodge, who should be here any minute. But this was drafted by Tristan Leavitt. And Tristan, I see, is now out there. Let's pull this up and make sure we've got Tristan ready to.
I got you loud and clear, Rob. Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, we spent a lot of time in the trenches with Gary and Joe. You recall there were, in addition to coming to Congress, ultimately we filed a defamation lawsuit, a lot of drama related to that. So once we finally kind of got through the woods there, we started looking at, what a real significant story this was, not just for these guys. Gary and Joe obviously put their careers on the line, but also what a great kind of thumbnail or case study it is of how the deep state really works. And so last November, we published this book that they wrote, The Whistleblowers versus the Big Guy. I've got the poster for it in the background for me here. But we also knew most people don't read books. And so, of course, that's why we decided to do this documentary, and really loved being able to collaborate with you when we thought we were launching our fundraiser. Unfortunately, the challenge has been somewhat similar to that it's been almost 2 months since we did the live streaming event, and Indiegogo was delaying, and it took several weeks. I was in the middle of the West Virginia legislative session. It was so frustrating because we thought that was going to be the launch, and people were excited. I had been talking to people about it for months, right? But then Indiegogo delayed. They asked us to change the content. We finally got the Indiegogo up after changing things to meet their demands. And then when we did, we started looking at running ads. And of course, some of the best digital real estate out there is Meta's, right? To use Facebook or Instagram Similarly, Google Ads, and even X, which of course had a change in ownership since the Twitter censorship of the Hunter Biden story. To date, we've been unsuccessful in being able to run ads on any of them. And for all of them, it's been this runaround. We are in discussions with people at Meta. They reached out to us after this started to get some attention, saying, "Hey, But basically, it's we'd get something up and then it'd be immediately taken down a couple days later. That's how Google Ads has done it. On Meta, even after we've jumped through one hoop after another, we actually had a very experienced ad executive who turns out is a conservative and heard about our project and wanted to help, even though the rest of his clients are not conservative, right? But very early into it, his entire account got shut down. And so we've just faced one brick wall after another in trying to get the news out about this. And so, as you know, Shielded by Power, that website was intended to be a crowdfunding campaign. That was the whole idea of the Indiegogo was, we have done the interviews for this, but we have not yet put them together. That's where the real costs of production are. And I don't know, at this stage, since this campaign has been so throttled, I think we're very, very closely approaching the stage where we say, we're not going to be able to raise the money this way. We're probably going to have to go a different route to figure out how to even finish the documentary, much less be able to distribute it. But of course, they never tell you that, right? They never say, they just put the screws and they say, we're not doing anything. No, we're not doing anything at all. No, the closest thing we've gotten, I think everybody realizes that given the context of the story we're trying to tell, right? We're trying to tell the story of how Facebook and Twitter, among other things, among other parts of the story, central part of this narrative. And so Twitter files, of course, all the people that were involved on our end, getting this information from the whistleblowers out, and then others like Miranda Devine telling a story about the laptop. But again, this is a story about media suppression to an extent. And so I think people realize they can't just come out and say, well, we're gonna censor this story. It's just been one thing after another. Again, it's been little screws. The closest we got was in kind of the customer service hell loop, right, with Meta, right, where you go from one person to another. Someone said, well, we just don't support this scope of content. We said, well, what does that mean, right? What is it about this? And so, they flag if it is a social or political issue, but we have gotten the approvals to do that and to run these ads, and still and part of what, for instance, Google just today responded to a story to someone there in California, saying, no, these guys are approved to run ads. There are no issues. But what we saw with them this last weekend was everything seems like it's fine. As you know, you put in an amount. You say, here's the ad, here's the amount we're willing to spend, and then they divvy that out somehow. I'm sure there's a technical term for that. I don't know what it is, right? You come back on Monday, though, and it says ad, dollars spent, 0. They use none of the money we allocated. So the ad just hasn't been run. They're saying there's no problems here, but they're just not running the ad.
Yeah, that is extremely frustrating. And it's ironic that the entire point of the film is to really talk about the media suppression. And then, of course, you run into the distribution of it and you're being suppressed by the same people who did the original suppression.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, one of the trailers, one of the main ads we've tried to do is an updated trailer from the original one that I know you've seen, but it's a media suppression trailer. And it specifically goes to, again, John Solomon, Mike Benz, Miranda Devine, Matt Taibbi, all talking about the suppression of the Hunter Biden laptop story in 2020.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask about that. I mean, there's some big names in this. It's not like this is some sort of hatchet job that you're just kind of throwing a bunch of speculation and, misinformation around. You've got, I haven't seen the film, obviously, but I think Chuck Grassley's in there. I think you've got James Comer. So, I mean, this is like a real serious project.
It absolutely is. And, of course, with these sources, what they're talking about also is in the public record, right? These are documents that Congress released. This is highly authenticated information. But again, no matter how good the interviews are, we can't make that into a full film if we don't have the funding to do so. And that's really the challenge that we're up against. Is it's just incredibly difficult to do. We've put a fair chunk of our own money into it, as has Fruition Productions, who we partnered with. They've done a couple of other documentaries, and they highlighted us in one they did about SEC conflicts of interest. And so, we partnered with them for this project, but without additional funding, we're just not going to be able to do it, at least in the same way. So if that's what it comes down to, we're kind of nearing the end of that Indiegogo campaign at shieldedbypower.com. If we come to that and we haven't been able to raise any of the necessary funds, we're just going to have to assess the landscape and figure out, what we do from here, whether we are able to make it, whether we do it on a reduced budget, which, obviously detracts from the message if there's a low production quality. But at the end of the day, we're a nonprofit, and, we don't have unlimited resources. So we rely on the public's support to do what we do.
Yeah, and that would be a real shame because, there's a lot of incredible information in there. I don't know how long ago that was, but we had a little kind of a sneak preview of what was to come. And we talked to Garrett Archer, I think, or Devin Archer.
Devin Archer, yeah.
Yeah, and we talked to a whole slew of people with details about exactly how this whole thing was connected and how, the entire net was created to cover this whole thing up.
Yeah. What I think would be exciting about the documentary, again, obviously we've chronicled the story of Gary and Joe in their book, but Miranda Devine has several books out. John Paul MacIsaac, the laptop repair shop owner. It's a mouthful.
Right.
That's just his name, but really fascinating guy, right? And so he's there. And so, yeah, from the subject matter experts like Peter Schweitzer talking about the kind of underlying conduct there, to the laptop going to John Paul MacIsaac. And we interviewed Bob Costello, who was Rudy Giuliani's attorney, who helped get a hold of the laptop and then ultimately took it to Miranda Devine. Again, others like John Solomon and Devin Archer shed a lot more light on Hunter Biden's business dealings. Matt Taibbi, Mike Benz shed light on, again, the suppression and really kind of the censorship machine that is out there and that's really grown after COVID, or really kind of in the aftermath of that. And then again, all the congressional figures, Jim Jordan, Jamie Comer, Jason Smith, Chuck Grassley. So what's exciting to me is being able to take these separate threads of the laptop, the Biden activity itself, the suppression of the story as the laptop came forward. What an insane story that is. And then these whistleblowers who kind of tie all that together as they learned about it and were able to say, gosh, Miranda, when your story was censored, we'd had that laptop in law enforcement custody for a full year. We knew it was authentic. There was zero reason. And as Chairman Comer has highlighted, part of the suppression that is insane is that the FBI is the same ones telling the Facebook, hey, you need to look out for Russian disinformation. They really set it up the stage for the 51 former intelligence officials, when the FBI is the agency that physically had the laptop in its custody, and they knew it had been authenticated. So it's just been one cover up after another here, but we hope that by weaving these together, it will really help to kind of drop the scales from the eyes of more of the American public.
Yeah, and I think that the same entities who were behind the cover up, obviously some of the administration has changed. You've got Kash Patel in versus Christopher Wray, and you've got a lot of, new skin in the game, new blood that's out there. But, the apparatus, the institution largely is still protecting certain political groups and, in an attempt to preserve their power. And so I thought that we had hearings about stuff like this. I know that it's been a while, but do you recall those hearings? Can you refresh our recollection? I thought we sorted out some of the social media stuff post-COVID. I know that Miranda blew the lid off the whole thing. And I thought, Chairman Jordan was all over it. It's kind of shocking that it's not solved, that it's just kind of recurring and it's like nothing has changed.
Yeah, well, it is. And to your point, I think it's because they use the little screws to turn, right? So again, the Hunter Biden laptop story was so blatant, the censorship there and the impact that it had. So of course, one poll indicates that 50% of voters in 2020 would have voted differently if they had known about the laptop. But the vast majority of people never learned anything about it. And so, that certainly has raised that, together with COVID and things like the release of the Twitter files by Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger, right? Those did draw kind of mainstream attention, and you had those hearings. But again, if you have a situation where we're just saying, look, we're trying to get this out there, we're just trying to run ads, and they say, oh, no, you got to go do this. Oh, you got to go do this. And we've been trying for weeks and weeks at this point, right? And it was the same with Indiegogo, right? That it wasn't first it was a delay of a few days. Oh, now we need this. Now we need this. And again, having done this launch, our streaming event together, like you said, there was Devin Archer, John Paul MacIsaac.
Yep.
I think Mike Benz got on there, right? All these different folks. And people are excited at the beginning of a project, right? People are saying, how do I donate? How do we make this happen? And yet you're just stuck in limbo for so long, right? I never appreciated the term production hell before. Now I'm like, this is it, right? Because again, you can't go anywhere if the funding mechanisms are unwilling to allow you equal access as they would for any other project, right? We're not asking for special treatment. We're not asking for anything different than what anyone else does when they go and run ads. But we have just not been successful in getting these ads to run. And as you say, I think it's something Congress has been interested in the past. I think there's some exploration here, some exploratory investigating to figure out, what is it that's going on here. And that's why we wanted to raise it to Congress's attention. It will take more time for them to kind of sift through, but we want to make sure that they're aware that this looks very similar to what happened in the past.
Yeah, and I know you sent a lot of letters to Congress. We've read many of them here on the channel. This one you've got going out to Chuck Grassley. It's going to Jim Jordan, James Comer. These are huge names. Jason Smith. He's on Ways and Means. Can you walk us through, is there it's government and you're sending letters to Congress. So is there a way to expedite this? Or, are they going to be able to deliver anything before we need to start, launching this thing and start developing some energy around it? Kind of, how's the process flesh out generally when you're working with Congress?
Yeah, well, another strongly worded letter, as people say, right? They go to just as much as they come from, right? So we're trying to get the attention of folks to encourage them to reach out here. It is difficult because obviously we are in such a saturated media landscape right now. Even if you didn't have all of kind of the chaos of the Epstein files that the House Oversight Committee has been focused on, Iran has really dominated headlines, and understandably so. So it's difficult because I think it's understandable that it's going to be difficult for this to be a priority for any of the committees, especially in an election year. However, we have had response. I won't identify who, but we have talked to one congressional office and provided them with some of this information. And so again, I am hopeful. It really is kind of just one office at a time. You got to talk to one staffer at a time and help them understand so they can brief their bosses and on up through the member. So I am hopeful that will gain attention altogether. Again, at this stage, we the campaign was intended to end this week anyway, right? At the end of this week. And so although we've recorded some other podcasts, I was just on with Jason Chaffetz earlier today. I think that comes out Monday, right? But again, although I think the suppression is a story that needs to be told, I do think there's also a reality for us of just needing to assess, okay, here's where we're at. Let's pull back and figure out what we do next with all this content. And there is still a reality that, you have other entities like the Daily Wire, the Epoch Times, others that have released kind of very full scope content. And, so we have also been in discussions with some groups like that. And maybe that's a route that we end up going. But it's just been, it's really disappointing to see that, again, we thought this was something that was resolved after Congress got involved before. And so to see just, again, one thing after another, oh, you got to fix this, you got to change this. And again, this is not just us trying to do this on our own. This highly experienced Hollywood ad exec running these for us as kind of a closeted conservative, if you will, and saying, I've never seen anything like this before. Crazy. Never on the political side, never on the entertainment side.
Yeah. And then you see in your letter, you write, Meta said that it's very simple. They don't support the scope of this content, right? Like that's it. And so you're dealing with this black box. So you can't even really compare and contrast it because a lot of it's, I think, behind their systems. So you can't say, okay, well, this Michael Moore film, just to name a, liberal filmmaker that I can think of, his film might get distribution. They support the scope of that content, but you can't see exactly what the mechanics were behind, that ad campaign or between their working together. And then over here, it's just kind of that blanket rejection. So if you wanted to even make a claim about viewpoint discrimination or to make an argument that this is some sort of a violation of the First Amendment or association or something where one political ideology is getting favored against another, it's hard to go get evidence to actually support that and make that claim.
That's right. And Meta, I will say, of the three entities, X, Meta, and Google, Meta is the only one that actually reached out to us. And someone who I know is now kind of working over there in their, I don't know, public affairs shop. And so they have said, okay, well, now you need to go do this. I mean, what they originally sent us was very generic. We said, no, we did that. So it's kind of been at every stage like, nope, we did this. Is there something else you want to tell us? So, but at least they reached out to us. X, again, shockingly to me, given Elon Musk's ownership, but X and Google, in both cases, it's just been a like, everything seems fine. Again, you set the ad to run, you come back and it's just not running, right? And we've got no response there other than, again, just Google denying anything is going on. But again, when we put money, we say, okay, here's the ad spend. It's connected to your account. Again, all the things are set and then just nothing runs and they don't even give a reason, right? X, we discovered you can't even get customer service. Now they just say, oh, you need to message this particular account on X. You go on there, you can't message them, actually, it turns out. So, that is what it is. But I think this might be kind of the fatal blow for this campaign right now. And we're going to have to figure out where to go here, because again, when powerful voices don't want a story to be told, it's very, very difficult to go against the tide there.
Yeah. And I'm, sorry to hear that. I'm hoping that maybe somebody out there might have, some influence or have a suggestion about how to, even get sneaky or get around. They might be seeing certain words or something like that. I think a lot of it, is algorithmically, but it sounds like if the campaigns are launching and it's working and then all of a sudden it's kind of cut off, it's, is there a human reviewing these things? And you really can't get anybody on the phone unless you're tagging Elon or Nikita, I think is his name, the other guy who's basically, single-handedly like running the whole platform. And it's very frustrating. So have you, like you said, talking about licensing maybe this, putting it on someone else's network and seeing if you can just kind of, create the content for them and then have them be the distributor?
That's a possibility. I mean, again, usually for the model to go to a real goal that we had, and I think you've heard me share this anecdote before, but right after the 2024 election, I had a high school friend reach out, and she's a Democrat. She's on the left. I haven't been in touch with her for years. She sent me a message saying, hey, I know you post about this kind of right-wing stuff all the time. I don't really think there's much to it. But then I saw that Hunter Biden pardoned his son, and now he just preemptively pardoned his siblings. So is there something more to this story? It's like, obviously there is, right? But so the idea that there's a whole segment of the population out there, I don't know how close to the middle they are or how far kind of center left it can extend, but who just have not heard the story at all. So a real goal of ours was to try and tell this in a compelling but neutral way. And so, to go about that, you would the normal model that you do is you finish the documentary and then you go to some of the film festivals and things like that, right? And that's where a Netflix or things like that are going to pick these things up. You can't do that if you can't finish the film from the outset. So,
right.
Usually, again, that's usually the challenge. So maybe there's a potential of someone coming in saying, hey, we're willing to purchase it and to put the money in up front so you can go ahead and finish this documentary. Those are the kind of options we'll be looking at now, I guess, in kind of this tier 2, unless things really change in the next few days with this crowdfunding campaign.
Yeah, and it's a real bummer. I mean, I do see, you scroll around Netflix or any one of these mega distributors, and there's, leftist film after leftist film, one after another, anti-Trump this, anti-Republican that. And it's, I think, difficult to establish a beachhead of this content. There's these other, I think, Angel Studios or some others that are talking, a little bit more, Christian-based stuff. And we're seeing some developments there, but you can't even get off the ground. If you can't even get the film made, then it kind of cuts you off at the knees, which is very disappointing, because we need this type of content to get out there so people can know the truth about it. Otherwise, they're just getting their media from, Jake Tapper and CNN, who says it's all Russian disinformation, it's all a Russian hoax, and there's nothing else to it.
Yeah, that's right. And it's funny because, again, a lot of people, I mean, your watchers and listeners, they will know this story already, or at least certain components of it. Again, there's new information from some of the journalists we've spoken to and others that's never been out there before, but at least the basic components of, like, again, the underlying Hunter Biden conduct, the ties to Joe Biden, the laptop in this press, and the Irish whistleblowers coming forward, but again, to have it all in one place is significant, we think. But again, even then, of those people who are really online, we are active on X, or at least I was before the West Virginia legislative session. I'm slowly getting out of my hibernation from that as our session ended just a couple of weeks ago. But, those places. But the reality is, again, there is a very large audience of the conservative kind of silent majority in this country who's not really tuned into the news. And so again, you need advertising, or you need those tools to reach out to those people who would be like, oh, I don't know about this, right? And so again, without access to those tools, you're just stuck. Again, we created this campaign so far on shieldedbypower.com. We've got 41 backers, right? And that's just the challenge.
Yeah.
Again, the public, the thing you would need to do is really get out there to the public, and you just can't do that without big tech. They are the gatekeepers.
Yeah. And can you talk a little bit about the funding gap, kind of where you're at, where you need to be in order to push this forward?
Sure. So our thought going into this, I mean, the reality is that to make the film is roughly to do a good production is roughly about $300,000.
Wow.
We've sunk about 100,000 of ours in there. And then, you would want to have a budget for, marketing or other things if we were doing it on our own. But again, just to make it is about 300,000. We put 100,000 in already. So again, normally on Indiegogo, the guys who, the individuals that made the film, My Son Hunter, Phelan McAleer is one of them. And we've been in touch with him. Right. And so they raised $2 million on Indiegogo for that project.
Wow.
And, so talking with them, working with them, I mean, we felt like there was very much a similar.
We lose your audio? No problem. We'll fill the air until we get you back. But there's a lot of information over at Shielded by Power. And let me just share that with you guys. Yeah, we've got some 41 backers. And what's great about this is that as you can see, let me just pull this over here so you guys can see this. You go over there, there's a lot of ways and a lot of benefits that you can get if you actually support and fund the project. So we have done that. So we've donated or pledged $500, and we bought 2 tickets so that we can go for the launch in Washington, D.C. So if this is something that you're interested in supporting and you want to go over there and grab a ticket, then we can connect literally in Washington, D.C. if this project, wraps up. If nothing, even if they can't reach that fund, they can't reach that top level to get what they need, then your money will be reimbursed to you, is my understanding of how all this works. But the point is, we want to show some force here to make sure we can get these things produced. And you can see here on the webpage, Miranda's in it, John Solomon, Garrett Ziegler, who's a friend of the show here. Mike Benz is going to be in the film. We've got John Paul Mac Isaac, and there's a bunch of different ways that you can actually support this. So if you're over at shieldedbypower.com, get a copy of an ebook, get a copy of become a Wire member, get a digital copy, buy a physical copy, get a bunch of options. You can get signed copies, you can get posters. Look at all these goodies. You can become an associate producer. You can become and host a screening. You can become an executive producer. And so that also might be an option too, right? There might be some really big, some big funders out there who may want to, support this. And is this a part, of a nonprofit?
So can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. If people want to donate directly to Empower, that is tax deductible.
Right.
And obviously we're pouring our resources into this. Going through the Indiegogo campaign is not tax deductible. Because again, there's these kind of incentives and other things tied to that.
Sure.
But as you said, if someone, at $10,000, someone could be an executive producer if we're able to do that. So the kind of threshold we set for this was $50,000. Just that if we meet that goal, then we're able to get that. If we're not able to meet that, then people get their commitments back. But yeah, there is, it's an interesting landscape right now. And one of the things that we've really found is that, conservatives as a general matter, right, we believe on return on investment. And, so I've kind of pounded the pavement talking to some other potential larger donors. And, it's a hard landscape, but one of the things that really strikes me is that these themes of, again, media suppression, which we feel like we're seeing some now, and also just kind of foreign influence on our elections. These aren't themes that are just tied to the Bidens who are out of the picture. I saw yesterday that Hunter Biden has moved out of the country, apparently, right? But these are themes that really plague our nation still, and that we have to be so vigilant for. And so, I am really hopeful that we'll find one way or another a way to tell this story, because again, I think that the core elements of it are so key, both to kind of the present in terms of understanding things like the deep state, what that really means and how it operates. A lot of people have this very kind of shadowy idea in their mind, and we can demonstrate, no, it's bureaucrat after bureaucrat after bureaucrat that have all this power and are politically aligned, that pull strings and do things in a way that benefit them and their side, just en masse throughout the government. And as well as, again, issues that I think we're going to continue to see in the future for some years to come.
Yeah, and the ROI issue, I can imagine that's being, a big one. But the ROI is pretty obvious from our perspective. If you want to win elections and you want to maintain a conservative ideology, of people who are in power, you can't have the FBI suppressing the truth in the middle of an election, right? You can't have these operations that are conducted by our own government, the DOJ and the IRS, to cover up evidence of crimes by the people in power. So I think it is an unfortunate reality that there's seemingly just an endless supply of money on the other side, and that'll just fund these projects without expecting an immediate ROI, because it ultimately will make them win elections and have power, and they'll get ROI in the aftermath of that. So hopefully, our side can find some more billionaires that are just a little bit, helpful in funding these projects.
Well, that would certainly be great. At the end of the day, we're obviously not a media production company at Empower. Our core mission is about protecting whistleblowers and helping get information out into the public sphere that wouldn't be out there otherwise. And, Gary and Joe, Gary Shapley and Joe Ziegler have been so gracious through all of this. Again, both to dedicate all of the funds from the book to Empower Oversight, again, as well as just to be willing to help promote this project. And, whatever happens with the documentary or doesn't happen, I am very hopeful that we'll be able to find more of the public that cares about these types of issues and recognizes that it might only be every 2 or 3 years, but we have to be ready to protect whistleblowers when they come forward. And that's really one goal of the documentary, had been to really encourage people to say, you can come through this and be okay, right? When we had the whistleblowers that contacted me about Tulsi Gabbard being subjected to quiet skies monitoring, having 3 air marshals on the airplane with her, those were whistleblowers who the TSA started to go after, and we really went to bat and totally got them to back off. And so the only reason we knew about that, as well as about kind of further, I testified in front of Rand Paul's Senate committee about others from January 6th who, either weren't present at the Capitol at all, or even other groups like those that had concerns about masks, all being subjected to this surveillance, right? So much information, can come from whistleblowers, and we've seen it again and again from FBI whistleblowers and others. But we want to help encourage more of them to come forward and to see that, hey, things can work out. In some cases, they don't. If people don't have good counsel, or they approach things, in a way where the law doesn't protect them, that can be a difficult situation. But so we want people to know, if you use counsel and you go about this the right way, you can perform a really significant public service, and you can come out through it okay on the other side. That's part of what we hope the documentary would help people to understand.
Yeah, and it's a real impact. I mean, we saw what Ziegler and Shapley did, what they were able to do. I mean, I think changed the entire conversation in the course of the election, really, and making sure that we can, create an environment that supports that, so that we have a less corrupt government, I think is critical to the survival of the country. I mean, that's the ROI that I see there. So we really appreciate your work. Can you give us a quick update? I know you're running for office as well. You're running for re-election.
Yeah, I am. So I'm here in the House of Delegates here in West Virginia. Our primary election is in about 5 weeks. So I was just out putting up some signs today. We had a really great legislative session, some really great things done. We defended some things like our great school choice program here, kind of universal eligibility for that, and some things I'm very happy about, some crypto accomplishments and some other things. One bill that I think will really help West Virginia, where I live, to kind of be forward looking when it comes to those kinds of things, and encouraging, especially if the Genius Act gets passed at the federal level, encouraging some of the decentralized autonomous organizations to come back here to the U.S. We need them to leave the Caymans and the Virgin Islands and Switzerland and come here to where they can really make a difference in the U.S. So yeah, the campaign's going well. There are really good things happening, and I'm excited to keep pushing issues forward, both in terms of transparency, which I'm really passionate about, as well as just policy issues that will help people to have a better quality of life and be better able to raise their families.
Awesome. Well, that's great. And so where can people connect with you? Obviously, shieldedbypower.com for the documentary, your campaign website, perhaps?
Yeah, Leavitt, Leavitt for WV, FORWV, Leavitt for WV. Has all my campaign information on there.
Amazing. All right. Well, Tristan, thank you so much, my friend. We're going to keep, staying on this and keep sending people over there, and hopefully some of the public pressure, maybe Congress responds and we get some, little elbow grease on these social media companies so that they just get out of the way. That's all we're asking for. It's just a fair set of rules. Let us just compete, normally with the other side, and may the best man win. But it's not how they play oftentimes.
Well, we'll keep fighting at it. But thank you so much for your support, Rob. Really great to see you. And I hope everything's going well for you.
Very well. Thank you, Tristan. All right, friends. So that was Tristan Leavitt. You know where to find him. He's over at shieldedbypower.com, and you heard his website address. And we're grateful that we have fighters like that. That guy and Empower Oversight, they've done a great job. We've covered a lot of their work here for years, just as outside observers. And it's nice to become friends with them so that we can help support their efforts, because I think in many ways we're all really trying to accomplish much of the same things, which are values here: accountability, transparency, and justice. And I think they embody the same. So thanks for sharing some time with them today. And if you have an opportunity to go support them, get an Indiegogo donation lined up. And if you want, I hope it goes through, because then we can have a little watcher event here in DC when they do the show launch. So the website, shieldedbypower.com, and we'll keep our eye on that project and hopefully see that documentary when it drops. It's going to be a good one. All right. So friends, it has been a beautiful stream, and sorry about that audio problem at the beginning of the interview. Your boy, as you can tell, doesn't do a lot of interviews here. So we're going to start hopefully figuring out some of the tech. But if you're just joining us, quick recap on what we talked about. We had some good updates today. Of course, we just heard from Empower Oversight. They sent a letter over to Congress. Grassley, Jordan, Jason Smith, James Comer. They said, we're being censored. Can you please help us? And so hopefully we get some updates there. They asked a bunch of good questions. Why are they failing to run our ads? Are they censoring us in a viewpoint discriminatory manner? Is this affecting other organizations who are involved in public interest advocacy? And even look, transparency and accountability right there. Some of our core values here. So hopefully we get some clarity on what's going on. But in the meantime, we'll continue to support them and hopefully have a great documentary coming out soon. We had some other very good updates today. We had Melania Trump coming out. I think there's a new Epstein strategy that is unfolding in the administration. It's good. We got the midterms coming up. We need to take this issue away from the other side that has been exploiting it for about a year now, and hopefully bring the truth back out into the spotlight and the front stage, so we can see nice success in the midterms and beyond. We saw Melania's email. We know that it was all before Epstein was ever even sentenced or convicted. Bill Gates is going to be testifying. Howard Lutnick is going to be testifying, and the saga will continue. We also then talked about Clavicle Girl. There's a new probe developing in the DOJ, courtesy of the Civil Rights Division and Harmeet Dillon. We refreshed our recollection on her handwriting lies and her text messages with Liz Cheney. Look at this nonsense. This gets me every time. Cass, heart, peace, heart, smiley face. Got it. So that's what they put out there. And now there's a new investigation underway. We saw and listened to a little bit of her audiobooks and had basically the sound of ice picks in our eardrums. And then we saw this interesting one where the Supreme Court now booted this guy called Sam Ronan, who allegedly is a fake Republican, off the ballot, dropped a decision today, Thursday, April 9th, and said, no, we're not issuing an injunction. You're not allowed to be on the ballot. You're not even a real Republican. You don't even like capitalism, so get out of here. We read both of the arguments back and forth before we heard from our friend Tristan over from Empower Oversight. And friends, now it is time to hear from you. And thank you for screaming at me about the audio on the stream. I'm glad you could hear him at least. I wasn't saying anything useful anyways. I rarely do. So friends, thank you so much for the donos. I saw a couple nice ones come in. It is great to have you here. And amazing. We got Melania. Super Melania. This is a little risque. Okay, we'll put this on the screen. Look at those eyeballs right there. Superwoman Melania, eyeballs. Okay, all right. She's a married man. She's the first lady. All right, be civil here. Hey, Jeffrey Adams. What's going on, Jeffrey Adams? Thank you for the dono. No comment, but we appreciate that, Jeffrey Adams. You rock. You're the man. This one is here from Leslie Turnbow. Leslie, very nice to see you. Membos, we'll be back tomorrow morning with our members only stream. We had a baby appointment this morning, so we recorded a video for our membos this morning, bright and early before we left the house. And I missed you dearly. So I'm excited to see you tomorrow morning for our members only morning stream. Amazing. Tanya, what's going on? The website. So we have Eric's house, which is now, speaking of donating money, man, just pumping for donations today. We'll save Eric's house for later. I'll hopefully pump you guys for donos later if you can support Eric's house. Amazing nonprofit. We'll come back to that, but Tanya said it's not working for her. It keeps going to a declined PayPal notice. I tried Venmo, Apple Pay, and more. Man, I wonder what's going on, Tanya. Yeah, thank you for letting me know about that. I'll have to send that over to the Eric's house team. Yeah, so we got the annual fundraiser coming up, and we'll do our mega Eric's house stream very soon. May 5th, I think, is going to be the day. Your boy needs to create my profile, and then we'll share that one for sure. Thank you for supporting Eric's house. So this worked for me. By the way, Greg got the credit because someone hasn't filled out the form. That's me. I'm a bad Eric's house social media person. Thank you for that. Someone hasn't done it. I think we all know who that person is. Hey, Rick, what's up? Longtime voice of NASA, Rick D, sent this from an airplane. Rob Navius announced on air today that the Artemis mission will be his last and will retire. His first launch as the voice of NASA was Shuttle Columbia STS-1 back on April 12th, 1981. Man, I wasn't even born yet. Absolutely amazing. Rick D, I think that space shuttle is coming back soon, right? The Artemis is coming back soon. Amazing. Hey, Sir Glocky McGlock, good to see you. Says, rest in peace, my granny. She got hit by a bazooka. Oh, man. Yeah, I think about her every time I hit the hookah. Kaboom, kablow, kaboom. What? I don't think you can say that about a blasted granny. Yeah, this is why I think people are a little reticent on the, your organ donor card. You're like, okay, am I going to donate my organs or am I going to be strapped to a chair and shot with a bazooka? Man who donated his mother's body to an Arizona center for Alzheimer's discovers it was sold to a U.S. military for $6,000, strapped to a chair and blown up in a blast. That is reprehensible. He thought that he was doing something nice for Alzheimer's patients. Now she's blown to smithereens. Not cool. Not cool. Sir Glocky McGlock shared this one. The Pentagon had to take this picture down off their social media of a crew chief working on an F-18 Growler electronic warfare aircraft while deployed because one of the carriers, because of a close-up, what is going on in here? They took it down because, oh, okay. I thought there was like nudity in it. I'm like, they took it down because there's nudity in it and then you're sharing it on the channel. It's not great. So it says, join the Navy, save big booty Venezuelans. That's a good reason of, I think, many other reasons. Yeah, it's one way to do it. If you're a single man, I'm not. I'm a happily married man. Love you, baby. Hey, Tim Jake, what's going on? Says 5 new membos coming in the house. What's up? Doctor Who, by the way, says Liz also needs to be prosecuted. Liz Cheney, no doubt. Stephanie Mitchell got a gifto. What's up, Soul Flare? What's up, Phoebe Belong? We got Boardwalk, Daniel Edwards, all gifted membos, courtesy of Tim Jake. Thank you, Tim Jake. Can't wait to meet everybody in the morning. It's going to be a beautiful stream on a lovely Friday. What's up, Jay Marino? Melania Trump is the epitome of class. The vile left who feign virtue and demand compensation for every criminal, illegal alien scumbag gleefully and remorselessly defame Mrs. Trump, Melania, with insinuations and lies. Mrs. Trump's response, nothing. That is regal. The deranged left have no shame. If I were Donald Trump, I might be unable to restrain myself from exacting merciless retribution. No other first lady has ever endured such vitriol. No, they put him on they put like Melania, they put Obama's husband. What's her name? Michelle, on all the magazines. Like she's, the most beautiful person ever to walk the planet. Melania, who's like a literal supermodel. They're like, no, we don't like her dress. Rub some dirt on it, man. Thank you. Your mic is muted. Tristan hears you, but we don't. User error. That's because your boy's an idiot. But we fixed it on the fly pretty quickly, so I'm proud of that. But thank you for letting me know. Rub some dirt on it. You know how it is over here. I don't know anything. Biology always wins. What's going on? 20 new friends coming in. Lori Chavez, welcome. Byron in the house. We got Sleeves and welcome. Brutally Honest. Rocco Pete. Rikers Mimi. Cynthia Fire Fairy. Big O's Pig. Here. D. DeBornot. Gospelizer in the house. Roscoe, welcome. NC Coder. Rich Martin. Frankie the Voice. Daniel Jackers. Sean Lively. Mango Man, Bunker Audio Panama, Jeremiah Johnson, and Long Low. Biology always wins. 20 new Membo friends coming in. Thank you for bringing them in. We'll see everybody in the morning for our Friday stream. It's going to be lovely. Joel Hunter, what's going on? Joel, welcome aboard. Thank you for signing up to support our work and to get our extra special member-only streams. You're the man. We love Joel. Hey, G-Gum. Oh, yeah, G-Gum, the thumbnail. I don't think I ever changed that. My apologies. Just got here, so I will need to start from the beginning to catch what I missed. Well, skip over the part where you can't hear anything I'm saying. I support you all wholeheartedly on this mission. Man, thank you, G-Gum. So Tristan and crew, if you're out there, if you need any graphics pro bono, I'm your gal. Look at these graphics, too. They're amazing. HeidiProductions.com. She makes me look good, too. Look at that. That's what this documentary is. Like, this is what we're talking about. Look at this. It's all, like, amazing people. All connecting the story. And they can't even share it because the companies are just preventing it. G-Gum, thank you. HeidiProductions.com if you need amazing graphics like that, by the way. You should go over there. Hey, Dan, Rob, have your guest provide the website address again. What he said before doesn't work. Well, that's not good. Shieldedbypower.com doesn't work. It just worked for me. So it's that or it's this one. The Shielded by Power it's easier. It's going to forward you right to that. Yeah, it goes to Indiegogo. Yeah, that's exactly right. So you nailed it. Shieldedbypower.com. It goes right over to Indiegogo. Here is for your Eric's House profile. G-Gum, I don't know where she gets these photos, but they're in my super secret private vault. I was experimenting, okay? Before we settled on this, I was experimenting. I was trying to get attention on social media. I thought that might work. It's a real photo. I don't know how. She must be a hacker or something, a computer hacker. But it's real. I can't deny it. Thank you. It's it might actually be the best idea ever. I might need to make that just my profile for all the accounts. Thank you, G-Gum. It's not a bad look, to be honest. It kind of reminds me of Michelle Obama. She had a hairdo like that one time. I think that's maybe why you made that. Because Michelle had like looks like a Star Wars kind of creature, or maybe like, I don't know what it is, something else. Cliff, what's going on? Rob, as you know, some of these people and what is happening to Tucker, Candace, and Meghan. Yesterday, Alex Jones and Barnes were calling for Trump to be removed via the 25th. I would understand if you punt on this. Well, I like a lot of those people a lot, actually. And, I think I actually appreciate multiple opinions out there. And I think they're sharing their perspective on what is best. I think there's also, by contrast, other people. If you want to go on the other side, you can say, what is Mark Levin doing? What is Ben Shapiro doing? What are all these other people doing on the opposite end that are calling for the cancellation and basically the elimination of their voices? I am a person who thinks that more voices is better. People can make their arguments. I'm not worried about jury, like people say Candace is going to taint the jury or something. Come on. We have voir dire. We have jury selection. All of that is going to be asked about. Tucker's allowed to have his opinions, just like Mark Levin is allowed to have his opinions. Ben Shapiro can have an opinion. Megyn Kelly can have an opinion. And I encourage them to share them aggressively. And we can disagree with them or agree with them, depending on that. But I think what they're seeing is, shifting policies, and they're having an argument about what is best for America, which I personally think is healthy. The last thing I want is to be like the left or to go back to the days where it's harmful and dangerous or it's misinformation or it's something where you're censored. I'm a strong believer in the First Amendment. If you don't like anybody, you can always change the channel. And that's it, really. That's my position on it, Cliff. So I appreciate the question. Hopefully that wasn't a punt. But yeah, I'm definitely not in the we should condemn people camp. You can disagree with them if people are doing illegal things or something like that. But if this is opinion, like this is what America's all about. We should have a lively debate. I personally don't like all the name calling. I think, like Bongino's in this one too, right? He came in, he did something, he's coming out. Now, people have opinions about him. But when we start calling each other names, I actually think that is beneath us all. I think, friendly disagreements are better than calling people, and I think both sides are doing this, by the way, satanic or demonic or, consumed by Satan or something like that. It's like, can you just make an argument and then we can hear the argument and then I can deal with the argument? I think it's ad hominem, right? It's a fallacious way to communicate. We try not to do that here unless we're talking about Big Fanny or Clavicle Girl. But ultimately, I agree with a lot of things that some of these people on this list say, and I disagree with a lot of things that some of these people on this list say. But I don't feel an urge to condemn them or to call them demonic or satanic. I just think, well, it's an interesting opinion. What's their argument for it? If the argument is bad, I just say, oh, that's a bad argument because it's riddled with fallacies. But that's all. Yeah. And for example, I don't think Trump should be removed. Like, what's the argument? Removed under the 25th Amendment? Why? Because he's crazy? I disagree with that. And so I think it's just, kind of natural debate, natural differences in policies. And, I wish, though, it was a more friendly disagreement. I really don't like all the name calling. I just don't think it's useful. And I think it's meant, actually, all of the efforts and all of the campaigns to just call people names is meant to really short circuit the logical thinking part of the brain. It's just meant to, if you hear it enough, you're just going to be programmed into thinking somebody's demonic, somebody's satanic, somebody's whatever, without actually undermining the argument. And then they can just use that phrase, this is a demonic person. And then that will override the logical thinking functions and the chips in the brain. And I actually don't think it's very healthy or useful. And so when I start to hear that, when I hear people, we talk about the concept, pounding the law if you have the law, pound the facts if you have the facts, pound the table if you have neither. And the pounding the table is really the worst argument of them all. So I think in some cases, people are pounding, this issue. People are pounding that issue. That's fine. Happy to do that. Keep going. We can combat that and debate that. But when you start screaming and shouting and pounding people and calling people, names, essentially, I actually think you're undermining your own argument. When I start to hear people do that, I just say, okay. So we try to stay focused here on the facts that are in front of us, look at the documents, stick to our values, and address the arguments on their face without getting into the whole war or the need to cancel or condemn each other or the other side. That's our take on it. Hopefully that wasn't a punt. Thank you for the question, Cliff. Hey, off label. Glocky's granny comment was from a song from Miami called Rest in Peace, Granny. Granny was beefing with the Sinaloa cartel. Well, hopefully she's successful, okay? Those cartels really need a good granny to come down there and whip them into shape. Hit them with the chancla or whatever they call it. So thank you, Off Label Podcast. Right next door, it's a podcast called Off Label Pod. Check it out. Tony, hey, Munkits, what's going on? Hey, this one says Cole Dodge has a 30-stream streak on Twitch. Man, I'm not even sure who that is. Cole Doge has a 30-stream streak on Twitch. What does that mean? Like you stream every day for 30 days? That's a lot. Yeah, even we take a break on Sunday, man. Like God told us to. Thank you, Tony. Hey, shout out to Cole Dodge. Rick D. Hey, Rob, look at my comment from this morning update you posted. I sent you a juicy immigration decision out of the Ninth Circuit where the judges, in my opinion, absolutely destroyed the entire immigration appeals process. We'll do that, Rick. That's a great suggestion. Rick's like our show prep connoisseur. We appreciate it. Hey, Villa Plot says, why is there no Rob Gouveia testimonial on that website? On Heidi Productions? Oh man, we'd love to give Heidi a good testimonial. Does she want a testimonial from us? She might have a bunch of nice clients who are like, I'd love to hire Heidi. Then they go over to the website, they see my big mug on the face, and they say, this is what she watches? Okay, we're gonna go to a different designer. So I'm happy to do it. Literally happy to do it. Jigam, I'll record you a very beautiful one because you are so amazing. So if that sounds like a good idea, John is saying, yeah, why isn't there? It's because I'm a piece of work. That's why. Hey, Rubos. And now for something completely different. Happy to announce we are working on my father's miraculous rock soup coloring book. That's the magical rock. Man, shout out to the Rubos. Yeah, so check it out. Check out the book, My Father's Miraculous Rock Soup. I think it's a really great project. And I think it's a beautiful idea. Not only is it a great story and a great book, and they put a lot of love into it, but it tells the story of kind of, the Rubo family. And I think it's a great idea, for like a family heirloom, right? So if you're thinking about something that you could pass on to your kids and kind of keep as a cherished treasure in your family, I think it's beautiful. So check it out, rubosaltshop.com for the best salt in the entire world. It comes from the oceans of France, and it's way better than whatever other garbage you buy at the store. So check it out. And a coloring book for the kids. Amazing. Jesser Bob, what's up? Clavicle Girl is writing peace, love, and happiness with those 3 emblems on the card. Clavicle Girl. Yeah, she is, right? Yeah, and the smiley face, right? So peace, love, heart, heart, peace, love, smiley face. She should also have a coexist on there too, like those stupid bumper stickers. Hey, what's going on? Jim Tells You. All right, so let's set that up right now. So friends, we can send you over to our friend, Jim Tells You. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the channel, enjoying the show over there. And we're happy to redirect to our community. So Jim, happy to do that. Let's see what we got cooking over here. Make sure we can find this right now. And that'd be nice if I put the mouse on the right button. Dun, 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 dun. Got it. All right, cool. So that's happening over on YouTube. Jim, have a great stream. Friends, hopefully have a fun time over there. Don't mind me, Donut. It means he has watched you for 30 straight streams, Rob. That's amazing. Wow, that's even better. So he's over there on Twitch. You have people watching on Twitch? I didn't think we had anybody watching over there. But that's pretty amazing. All right, so let me see if I can find that. Can't even find our channel. Robert Gouveia, is that what it's called? Hey, we're live. Who's over there? Find our channel. That's me. Okay, we got some followers. Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of activity over there, which is interesting. I don't think we stream a lot over there, but nobody cares. Maybe it's because I don't pay attention. Sorry about that. So friend who's watched us 30 days in a row over there, extra mega shout out to, what did I do with that one? Over here, dun, 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 dun. That's the real photo. I don't know what I did with it. Shout out to Doge. Tony Haymunkets, Villa Plot. Good to see you guys over on Twitch. Thanks for watching over there. It'd be nice to have, some impact over there because there's a lot of mega leftist streamers over there. I think Asmund Gold, right? He's over there. He's on kind of on the right, which is good. But a lot of the other big lefties are over there. So, we kind of want to push back, get in their territory, get in their turf. Friends, thank you for those amazing donos. Let's see what's happening on locals, then we'll wrap it up for the day. We'll check out what's happening on X and others. Amy Ann, sorry about that. Rob is muted. Sorry about that. What a doofus. And yeah, Dan shared this one, the Dugan update. Ooh, we've got sentencing scheduled in the Dugan case. And hey, shout out to also Jesse Kelly. He invited us on the channel today. We talked about backdoor Dugan. And I tried to slip in the backdoor Dugan stuff, and he didn't. He kind of like maybe laughed a little bit. He's like, but I don't think he really thought it was that funny. I couldn't tell. But anyways, we talked about backdoor Dugan. We talked about Irina Zarutska, and we now have sentencing on backdoor Doogie. I'm going to make sure we get that calendared. We might have to just have a dedicated stream, and we'll just open up the back door right there so we can all see it. All right, so friends, what's going on? Defrauded in China. Check out his website, thechinahustle.us, talking about the Hunter Biden case, and says Mongolia Pictures with Mark Cuban produced the movie, The China Hustle. Mark and I used to bowl together as a teenager. I will write to him. He backed the China Hustle movie. Man, that's amazing. So the China Hustle, and he's got his whole story. I'd encourage you to check it out if you're interested in the Hunter Biden stuff. It's the ChinaHustle.us. A lot of people got scammed by these scumbags, and Joel is one of them. Good to see you, Joel. And thank you for dropping the reference to the China Hustle movie. Very interesting. We also had some comments from the Post this morning. Where the heck is that one? From your boy. Let's take a look on locals. Yes. Okay. So here was our morning update from this morning. There's your boy in a hat because we were racing out the door. Hey, crazy KPM. Children come very first. God bless you and have a great day. Well, that's true. And thank you for that. I hate, missing our morning streams, but I got a baby growing. My beautiful wife's belly. It's a real thing. Hey, Pookie's Ma, I don't see Jesse Kelly live. Does anyone know where to find it? It's definitely on YouTube. Yeah, and it's definitely on YouTube. Let me see if I can grab the link. Yeah, Jesse Kelly, American radio host. There it is. Jesse Kelly, DC. Dun, 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 dun. And where's your boy at? Let's take a look. Hey, there's me. All right, so it was this one right here. Judge halts the trial of Irina Zarutska. We talked about this. Man, he has a good producer. He's got a whole show. Where was your boy at? There we are. Yeah, look at that right there. Amazing. Thank you, Jesse, for having us on. It was a good conversation. And I like it because he just lets me go. I just get to talk as much as I want, which is very easy for me. Sadie. Hey, thanks, Dan. Thanks for... Oh, let me grab you the link on that. Sorry about that. Let me grab the link. That's why we looked it up. So we'll drop that in the chat if you want to go check that out. Hopefully, if this loads up. Boom. Here we go. Dropping that for our YouTube friends. And let's drop this over for our locals friends. Although there we go. Back over here. Boom. All right, drop those. Thank you, Jesse, for the invite. Always a good time to hang with you. All right, so we had also Rick D shared this one. Absolutely insane. Found this decision from a Ninth Circuit denying illegal immigrants appeal. The immigration judge told the illegal to appeal their decision to, quote, buy some more time. Urge you to take an appeal. No, I urge you to take an appeal, and that'll buy you some more time. Do you understand? He's like, yes, Judge. See. Yes, me gusta. Sounds good. Man, thank you for that. That's a new one. I don't think I saw that one. Yeah, thank you, Rick D, for that. We may come back on that tomorrow. Hey, Sadie, has anyone other than you, Rick, seen this and flagged it? The difference on this and Dugan, she was physical about the delay in escaping justice. He put it out there for all to hear. We saw it, and now we hear it. Maybe criminal charges for that? Yeah, thank you for flagging it for us, Rick. I did not see that one. Yeah, not to sound disrespectful to Rob, says Sadie. It's okay, even if you did want to sound that way. I was thinking more in the area of those like Cash or Blanche, since, we can't actually prosecute anybody. But I don't know if they've gotten a wind of it yet or not. Hey, Jesser Bob, this is a great comment. Jesser Bob says, Heidi does amazing work. I highly recommend her. She can take your vision and bring it to life better than you would ever expect. For example, I showed her a picture and I told her I would like it done like Minecraft, and this is what she created for our families. That's amazing. She is really talented. 160 sword. Night Stalkers don't quit. You made family shirts? Man, that's amazing. I can't wait to have some kids and make little shirts and do all of that fun stuff. Awesome. Thank you for the endorsement, Jesser Bob. HeidiProductions.com. All your graphic needs solved and Beautiful. My goodness, I'm looking at a really serious surgery on locals right now. Susanna, is that your neck? All right, I won't put it on the screen because it's gnarly. But prayers up for your rapid and speedy healing on that. You had a major surgery. Good Lord. All right, so hopefully you're not in a lot of pain. Someone says, this is a good-looking incision. It is a good-looking incision, but it's a big one. It is really a big one over there. All right, so friends, let us pause here for the night. Let's say what's up to X, and then we'll wrap it up on the day. We got Villa Plot and Tony Haymunkets on Twitch. Amazing to see you both. And what's going on X before we close it out? Any comments? We had a couple of comments. Nice. Neuro D, thank you for this. Neuro D, sharing our locals, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Come and join us for our members only stream at that website, or join us on YouTube, or click the Substack link in the chat. Harmeet, says B. Torn, hasn't been watching her underlings carefully. Some are undermining her Second Amendment civil rights cases. Yeah, I don't know who was behind that one, but thanks for flagging it for us. Yeah, you know, Jeanine Pirro came out. Like, the DOJ's kind of had an internal war about this. The DOJ suing the city of D.C., but then Jeanine Pirro, because their gun laws are unconstitutional, and then, like in the same week, Jeanine Pirro coming out and saying, we're going to enforce their unconstitutional gun laws. It's like, okay, why? Why would you enforce an unconstitutional law? That doesn't make any sense. Good to see you. Here's another one. Jigum's got some, I think this picture came from the future, but it's probably real. It's from the future. Probably used AI or something to pull it out of 2 years from now. But those are our babies coming up soon. And hopefully they both have the widow's peak. Especially the girl. Definitely the boy, but especially the girl. All coming soon. All right, so friends, Jigum, thank you for that. We'll pause here for the evening. Thanks for hanging with us and for joining us. Good to see you, Boopsy. Rubos, very nice to see you. Yeah, that is a really serious incision. Boopsy says, oh my. Yeah, it's a big one. Hopefully you're feeling well, you're healing up, and you're going to be head bobbing in no time, like a heavy metal rock star. That's how good that incision looks. All right, so friends, lovely stream. Tomorrow we will be coming back here, and tomorrow it will be a Friday. We're excited about that. Hopefully you come back and join us. We'll see what the week has in store for us as we close it out. Before we leave, we'll say thanks to our amazing mods and meme smiths. Of course, John is here. Donut mind me. We got Muffin Rando, K-Bean, Carrie B, Neuro D, Janek, Dog Digger, Jigum Gigum, Elliot, and just Rhonda. Modding the fort down for us, keeping things nice and orderly. And friends, thank you for being here. Thank you for subscribing on your way out. Thanks for liking this video. Thanks for sharing it with a friend or family member, or just everybody you've ever met in your entire life. We'll come back tomorrow. We'll get into it again. And in order to do that appropriately, we are going to need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night. Sleep very, very well. And we'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching, my beautiful friends. Now it's that time where the stream must end. You brought the heat with every chat and line. Together we expose corruption. One more time we dove in the truth where the media hides. Lit up the lies with receipts on all sides. The fight isn't over, but we made them sweat. We ain't done yet, no, not just yet. Because together we are watching the watchers. Truth on our side. Watching the watchers. We won't be denied. Watching the watchers. Eyes open wide. Fighting for freedom with nothing to hide.